I never thought I'd be in this situation, torn between the people I love, forced to make decisions that would change everything. But looking back, maybe I should have seen it coming. Maybe I should have been more careful about who I trusted, more protective of what mattered most. It all started years ago when my first marriage ended, not with a dramatic divorce, but with a quiet, mutual decision to separate. My ex-wife, Julia, and I had been together for over a decade, but somewhere along the way, we realized we were just coexisting. Still, we didn't want to disrupt our daughter, Emma's life, so instead of going through a messy divorce, we agreed to remain legally separated while still living under the same roof. It wasn't a conventional arrangement, but it worked for us. Emma had both parents around, and we avoided the financial strain of dividing assets. We were more like polite roommates than a married couple, but that was fine. Until I met Lauren. Lauren was everything Julia wasn't: outspoken, vibrant, and completely unfiltered. We met through mutual friends, and before I knew it, I was falling for her. She was a widow with 2 kids of her own, and she made me feel alive again. She made me believe that I could have a second chance at happiness. After a year of dating, I was ready to move forward with her. I told Julia that I wanted to leave, to finally have my own life outside of our arrangement. But she reminded me of the promise we had made, to stay together under one roof until Emma turned 18. She argued that stability was the most important thing for our daughter, and I, reluctantly, put my plans with Lauren on hold. Lauren wasn't happy about it. She never understood why I let Julia dictate so much of my life. To her, I was still emotionally tied to my ex, still living in the past. She wanted me to choose. Either I moved on with her, or I stayed stuck in my old life. I told her to be patient, that things would change in time. But then, everything did. Julia passed away unexpectedly. A sudden heart attack. No warning. No time to prepare. Just gone. Losing her hit me harder than I expected. For years we had been separated, but she was still my family. And Emma, she was devastated. She lost not just her mother, but the home life she had always known. I did my best to comfort her, but I didn't know how to be both a father and a mother to her. That's when I made my first mistake. I thought what Emma needed most was stability, a complete family, a fresh start. So, instead of giving her time to grieve, I rushed ahead and married Lauren. It wasn't a grand wedding, just a simple ceremony with close family and a few friends. I thought Emma would come around, that she'd warm up to Lauren and her kids, Aiden and Lily, with time. So, I moved them all into our house, believing it would make us stronger. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was wrong. At first, Emma was quiet. She never lashed out or threw tantrums, but the distance was obvious. She spoke when spoken to, answered when needed, but nothing more. She stayed in her room most of the time, barely interacting with Lauren or the kids. Lauren tried to be patient, at least in the beginning. She encouraged Emma to join us for dinners, family outings, and weekend trips. But Emma remained detached. She wasn't outright rude, but she wasn't present either. I kept telling myself she just needed more time. Lauren, however, saw it differently. To her, Emma wasn't just grieving. She was refusing to accept change. She believed that Emma was clinging to the past, holding on to the memory of her mother in a way that made it impossible for our new family to move forward. "She's shutting us out, Mark," Lauren told me one night. And I get it, I do. But she needs to start making an effort. She can't act like we don't exist forever. I wanted to believe Lauren had a point, but something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. Maybe because deep down, I knew Emma wasn't just being difficult. She was hurting, and I had thrown her into a completely new life before she had the chance to process the old one. Still, I told myself it was just an adjustment period, that things would get better. But things didn't get better. It started with small things. Emma and Lauren's interactions became colder. Aiden and Lily started treating Emma like she was an outsider in her own home. And worst of all, Lauren stopped trying. At first, she had made an effort to bond with Emma, but as weeks turned into months, she seemed to resent my daughter's indifference. She stopped including her in family activities, stopped asking her to join us for game nights or dinner conversations. One evening, I overheard her talking to Aiden and Lily when they thought I wasn't home. "Just ignore her," Lauren sighed. "If she doesn't want to be part of this family, that's her choice." I froze. I wanted to believe she didn't mean it, that she was just frustrated. But hearing her say those words, that hit me hard. Had I made a mistake? Had I forced something that was never meant to work? And then, just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, everything changed. The call came from Julia's lawyer. She had left behind an inheritance, real estate, a substantial amount of money, assets I never knew existed. And all of it, every single thing, belonged to Emma. Not me. Not our family. Just her. The lawyer explained that Julia had inherited most of it from a relative years ago, but had kept it quiet. And now it all legally belonged to Emma. I sat there in stunned silence as the reality sank in. Julia had made sure our daughter would never have to struggle. She had made sure Emma had something that was hers alone, and she had left me out of it entirely. Lauren was furious. She had assumed that, as my wife, she would share in any wealth Julia had left behind. But now she saw the truth. The money, the property, none of it was hers. None of it was ours. It belonged to Emma. And just like that, the fragile peace in our home shattered. As I sat across from the lawyer, trying to process what I had just heard, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not just shock, not just confusion, but something darker. Resentment. I had struggled for years. My business was barely staying afloat. And Julia had known that. She had known I needed help, and yet she never once offered. She had left me with nothing, and for the first time, I found myself looking at my daughter not as my little girl, but as someone standing in the way of everything I had worked for. And that thought terrified me. The drive home from the lawyer's office felt longer than usual. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. My jaw clenched as thoughts spun in my mind. I should have been relieved that my daughter was financially secure, that Julia had planned for her future. But I wasn't. Instead, a bitterness I wasn't proud of settled in my chest. Why hadn't Julia told me? Why had she kept it all hidden while I struggled for years? Why had she chosen to leave me with nothing? I didn't want to feel this way. I was her father. I had always worked to provide for her. But after everything I had sacrificed, everything I had built, it felt like a cruel joke to find out that she had everything while I had nothing. And I wasn't the only one who felt that way. Lauren was already home when I arrived. The moment I walked through the door, she took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked, arms crossed. I hesitated, then told her every detail. I expected her to be shocked, maybe even sympathetic. But the moment I finished speaking, her expression darkened. "So let me get this straight," she said slowly. "Your ex-wife had all this money, all this property, and she never told you, not even once? And now everything belongs to Emma?" I sighed. "Yes." Lauren scoffed. "That's unbelievable. Do you realize what this means?" I didn't answer. "She's just a kid, Mark. She doesn't know how to handle all that. And you're the one who's been raising her, the one who's been sacrificing for her. How is this fair?" I didn't have an answer for that either. Lauren's voice softened, turning almost coaxing. "Look, I'm not saying you should take anything from her, but don't you think, as her father, you should have some kind of control over this?" Something about the way she said it made me uncomfortable. I shook my head. "It's in her name, Lauren. Legally, I can't touch it." "Maybe not now," she said carefully. "But when she turns 18, she's still a teenager, Mark. You need to guide her. Make sure she doesn't throw it all away." I wanted to believe that's what she meant, that she was only thinking about Emma's well-being. But there was something else in her tone, something greedy, and I didn't like it. The shift in our household was immediate. Emma, already distant, pulled away completely. I wasn't sure if she sensed the change or if it was just a natural reaction to what was happening. But overnight, the fragile peace in our home shattered. Lauren and her kids became colder. They stopped pretending to include Emma in family activities. At dinner, Aiden and Lily whispered between themselves, ignoring her entirely. And Lauren, she barely spoke to Emma at all. I told myself I needed to step in, to say something. But I didn't. Because deep down, I was angry too. Not at Emma, not exactly. But at the situation, at Julia, at the fact that everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed, now felt meaningless compared to what Emma had been handed without effort. And worst of all, she didn't even seem grateful. One night, about a week after the lawyer's call, I came home late from work. The house was quiet, the dim glow of the living room lamp the only source of light. I expected Lauren to be waiting for me, but instead, I found Emma sitting on the couch, staring at her phone. "Hey," I said, surprised to see her still awake. She looked up at me but didn't reply. I sighed and sat down across from her. "We need to talk." She exhaled sharply, setting her phone down. "About what?" I hesitated. "About everything. The inheritance. The house. What comes next?" Her expression hardened immediately. "There is no what comes next. Mom left everything to me. It's already decided." A sharp sting of irritation flared in my chest. "I know that," I said, keeping my voice measured. "But I just think, given your age, you might need some guidance on how to handle it all." Emma's eyes narrowed. "Guidance? Or control?" I stiffened. "That's not what I meant." She scoffed, crossing her arms. "Right, because I'm sure it's just a coincidence that ever since the will was read, you and Lauren have been acting differently toward me." "That's not fair," I said. "No, what's not fair is you letting them treat me like I don't exist in my own home," she snapped. I blinked, caught off guard. Emma never raised her voice. She was always quiet, reserved. Even when she was upset, she never lashed out. But now she was looking at me with pure resentment, and I realized this wasn't just about inheritance. This was about everything. Years of feeling second to my new family. Years of watching me prioritize Lauren and her kids. Years of swallowing her hurt until she finally snapped. I opened my mouth to respond, to say something, but she didn't give me the chance. "You know what?" she said, standing up. "Forget it. I don't even care anymore. Do whatever you want." "Emma..." But she was already walking away, disappearing down the hallway without another word. A part of me wanted to follow her, to fix things, but the other part of me, the tired, bitter part, just let her go. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Beside me, Lauren shifted in her sleep, unaware of the storm raging in my head. For the first time, I wondered if I had made a mistake, if I had married too soon, if I had failed Emma in ways I couldn't even comprehend. And for the first time, I felt afraid, because I could see where this was heading, and I wasn't sure I could stop it. The tension in the house had become unbearable. Emma no longer spoke at dinner. She ate quickly, avoiding eye contact, and disappeared into her room. If Lauren asked her to do something, she'd nod but say nothing. If Aiden or Lily ignored her, she ignored them right back. It was a Cold War, and I had no idea how to fix it. Lauren, however, had a solution. "She needs to learn some respect," she said one night as we lay in bed. I sighed. "She's grieving, Lauren." "She's also being rude," she countered. "I get that she lost her mother, but that doesn't give her a free pass to act like we don't exist." I wanted to argue, but part of me agreed. Emma had been distant, short-tempered, closed off. But wasn't that my fault too? I had let things fester. I had allowed the resentment to take root in our house. And now, it was poisoning everything. The final straw came on a Sunday afternoon. Lauren had taken the kids out for lunch, leaving Emma and me alone. It was the first time in weeks we were in the same room without anyone else around. I found her in the kitchen making a sandwich. "We need to talk," I said, leaning against the counter. She didn't look up. "We already did." "Emma..." "No, Dad," she snapped, finally meeting my eyes. "You talked. You told me what you wanted. You told me how you and Lauren think I should handle the money Mom left me. You never once asked how I feel about any of this." I opened my mouth, but she wasn't done. "You think I don't see what's happening?" she demanded. "You barely talk to me anymore. Lauren and her kids act like I don't exist, and you let them. And why? Because you're mad that Mom didn't leave you anything? That's not fair," I said through gritted teeth. "Isn't it?" she shot back. "Because it sure feels like it. Ever since we found out about the inheritance, you've been different. And don't try to deny it, because you know I'm right." I clenched my fists. I lost your mother too, Emma. You act like I don't feel anything about this, but I do. I've been doing my best to keep this family together, and all you've done is push me away." She let out a bitter laugh. "What family?" My stomach dropped. "This isn't a family," she continued. "This is your new life, and I'm just an inconvenience in it. You think I haven't noticed how much easier it would be for you if I just disappeared?" "That's not true." "Isn't it?" she whispered. The words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were honest. Before I could respond, she put her plate in the sink and turned to leave. "Emma." She didn't stop. I should have gone after her. I should have fixed it. But instead, I let her walk away. And that was the moment I lost her. I didn't see her the next morning. Or the next. By the time I realized she was gone, she had already packed a bag and left. I checked her room, my stomach twisting at how empty it felt. Her clothes were still there, but the small things, the things that mattered, were missing. Her jewelry box, her favorite books, the old stuffed bear she still kept from when she was little. A note sat on her bed. "I can't stay here anymore. Don't bother looking for me." Lauren found me standing in the doorway. "She'll come back," she said, arms crossed. "She's being dramatic." I turned to face her, finally seeing things clearly for the first time in months. "This isn't her fault," I said quietly. Lauren frowned. "Mark." "She left because I failed her." Her face twisted with frustration. "You're really gonna blame yourself for this? After everything she's done? You're her father. She should respect you, not run away like some spoiled brat." My stomach churned. I wasn't blind anymore. Lauren had never cared about Emma. Not really. Maybe she never wanted her gone, but she had never wanted her here either. And I had let it happen. I had let her feel alone in her own home. I stepped back, suddenly exhausted. "I need to find my daughter," Lauren scoffed. "You're seriously going after her?" I didn't answer, because nothing else mattered anymore. I searched for Emma for 3 days before I found out where she had gone. She was staying with my in-laws, her mother's parents. The moment I heard, a wave of guilt hit me so hard I had to sit down. She hadn't run away. She had gone home. When I finally gathered the courage to go see her, my former mother-in-law, Janet, met me at the door. "She doesn't want to see you," she said, arms crossed over her chest. I swallowed. "Please, just give me 5 minutes." Janet hesitated, then stepped aside. I found Emma sitting in the living room, curled up on the couch, a book in her hands. She didn't look up when I walked in. I sat down across from her, my heart pounding. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "Nothing. I should have..." My throat tightened. "I should have listened to you. From the start. I let you down, Emma. I let Lauren treat you like you didn't belong in your own home, and I didn't stop it. I made you feel like you didn't matter, and that's the last thing I ever wanted." Finally, she set the book down. "You say that now," she murmured. "But when I was there, you didn't care. You let them push me out." I ran a hand over my face, ashamed. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone. I thought if I just kept the peace, things would get better. Emma let out a hollow laugh. "And what about me? Did you ever once think about what was best for me?" I opened my mouth, then shut it. Because no, I hadn't. I had been so desperate to hold on to the life I was building with Lauren that I forgot about my daughter. "I don't expect you to forgive me," I admitted. I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I don't blame you for leaving." Emma's gaze flickered. "Are you still with her?" The question made my chest ache. Because I knew what my answer had to be. I had to choose. And it had taken losing my daughter to realize there was no choice at all. I returned home that night, exhausted and drained. Lauren was waiting. "Well," she asked, arms crossed. "Did you bring her back?" I exhaled. "She's not coming back." Lauren scoffed. "Of course she isn't. She's too busy playing victim." Something inside me snapped. "You never cared about her, did you?" My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade. Lauren stiffened. "Excuse me?" "You never wanted her in this house," I said. She was an inconvenience to you from day one, and I let you push her out." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. She left because she's a spoiled little—" "Enough!" Lauren's mouth snapped shut. "I don't care what you think about her," I said, my voice steady. "I don't care what excuses you make. She's my daughter, and I let you make her feel like she wasn't." Her eyes narrowed. "What are you saying?" I inhaled deeply. "I want a divorce." The color drained from her face. "You're joking." "I should have done it the moment she walked out that door," I admitted. "But I was too afraid of what it would mean. Of losing this fantasy I had in my head of us being a family. But it was never real. Not for you." Lauren stared at me, her lips pressed into a thin line. Then she let out a cold laugh. "This is about the money, isn't it?" I blinked. "What?" She folded her arms. "She's got you wrapped around her little finger. She's sitting on millions, and suddenly you're playing doting father again. How convenient." I flinched, the words hitting harder than I wanted to admit. But not because they were true, because they used to be. I resented the money at first. I had let it taint the way I saw my own daughter, and that was my biggest regret. But that wasn't why I was choosing her now. I was choosing her because I should have done it from the start. "You can believe whatever you want," I said. "But I'm done pretending." Lauren's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said softly. "I'm fixing one." And with that, I turned and walked away. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in the guest room, my mind racing. Lauren didn't try to stop me. She didn't come to argue or beg. Maybe she thought I would change my mind, but I wouldn't. The next morning, I packed a bag. I called a lawyer, and then I left. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew where I needed to be. I stood outside my in-laws' house, bag slung over my shoulder, heart pounding in my chest. I had left, really left. There was no going back now. I knocked, and this time, when my ex-mother-in-law opened the door, she didn't try to block me. "She's in the back," Janet said quietly. I nodded and stepped inside. Emma was sitting on the porch, staring out at the yard, knees pulled to her chest. I hesitated, then sat down beside her. For a long moment, she didn't acknowledge me. Then, without looking away from the horizon, she said, "She's still there, isn't she?" I exhaled. "No, I left." Emma's head snapped toward me, eyes wide. "You, what?" I swallowed hard. "I walked away, Emma. I filed for divorce this morning." She stared at me, expression unreadable. Then quietly she asked, "Why?" It was such a simple question, but the weight of it crushed me. I ran a hand through my hair, my voice hoarse. "Because I should have done it the second you walked out that door." Emma's lips parted slightly, but she didn't speak. "I let her push you away," I admitted. "I let her make you feel like you didn't belong, like you weren't wanted. And I swallowed the lump in my throat. I can't take that back, but I can stop making excuses. I can stop choosing someone who never gave a damn about you." Emma's breath hitched. "You don't get to just fix this overnight." "I know." She looked away. "You let her treat me like I was nothing." I flinched, the words like a knife to the gut, and she was right. But I wasn't going to let that be the end of our story. I turned to face her fully. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I need you to know that I'm done putting everyone else before you. I lost you once. I don't want to lose you again." Emma was silent for a long time. Then finally she whispered, "I don't know if I believe you." My chest ached. "Then let me prove it." I stayed at Janet's house for a while, not in Emma's space, not pushing her. Just there, present. For the first time in years, I actually showed up. We didn't talk much at first, but slowly, little moments started breaking through the wall between us. One night, I made dinner for everyone. Emma didn't say much, but she ate the plate I made her. Another night, she sat in the same room as me and watched TV. She didn't acknowledge me, but she didn't leave either. Progress. Then came the day she asked me, "So what happens now?" I sighed. I figure out where to go from here. Start fresh. Rebuild my life. Emma studied me carefully. And where do I fit in that? My throat tightened. Anywhere you'll have me. She didn't respond right away. Then, hesitantly, she said, I don't know if I'm ready to move back in with you. I nodded, forcing myself to accept it. That's okay. Another pause. But maybe we could have dinner, just the two of us. Sometimes. My heart nearly broke under the weight of that single sentence. I smiled, swallowing past the emotion. I'd like that. Lauren didn't make the divorce easy. She dragged it out, tried to guilt me, tried to turn things around on me. She claimed I was abandoning her, that she had sacrificed so much for me, that I was throwing away our family. I let her rant, because I was done listening. For once, I was choosing my daughter, and I wasn't backing down. Weeks passed, then months. Little by little, Emma let me back in. We had dinner once a week. She started texting me, sometimes just one-word answers, sometimes full conversations. She was still guarded, still wary, but she was there. And that was more than I deserved. Then, one night, she asked, Did you ever resent me for getting everything in the will? I felt my stomach drop. I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. At first, yeah, I was struggling, and your mom never told me about any of it. It felt like she didn't trust me, like she wanted to cut me out. Emma stared at me, waiting. But then I realized, I swallowed hard. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was protecting you. Emma's breath hitched. She knew I'd lost myself, I admitted. She saw it before I did, and she knew I would let the wrong people take from you. Emma looked away, blinking quickly. You let Lauren treat me like crap. I did, I whispered, and I will never forgive myself for it. Silence stretched between us. Then, barely above a whisper, Emma said, I think Mom would have wanted us to fix this. Tears burned in my eyes. I think so too, I said. And for the first time in a long time, I had hope. Time moves differently when you're rebuilding something broken. Some days, it felt like progress. Like Emma and I were finding our way back to each other, one careful step at a time. Other days, it felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking at all the years I had wasted, wondering if I had already lost too much. But I kept going. I had to. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just hoping to be a better father. I was becoming one. Lauren was furious when the divorce was finalized. She had expected me to crawl back, to beg, to let her keep control. Instead, I walked away without looking back. She tried to fight for money, claiming she was owed something after everything she sacrificed. But legally, she had no claim to my daughter's inheritance. The house had been sold, the assets divided. And in the end, Lauren walked away with less than she thought she deserved. But I didn't care about the legal battle. I only cared about Emma. And for the first time in years, I was free to focus on her, without the weight of my past dragging me down. One afternoon, Emma called me. It wasn't planned. It wasn't one of our usual dinners. It was just her, reaching out. Hey, she said, voice quieter than usual. Hey, I answered, keeping my tone light. What's up? She hesitated. Then, I was thinking about Mom today. I exhaled slowly. Yeah? A pause. She was smart, smarter than I ever gave her credit for. I smiled softly. She was. Another pause. Do you think she would have been proud of me? I closed my eyes, my chest tightening. She would have been so proud of you, Em. Her breath hitched. I gave her a moment before I spoke again. I know I wasn't there for you the way I should have been, I admitted. But I see you now. And you've turned into someone your mom would have been damn proud of. Silence. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, I'm starting to believe that. And in that moment, I knew we had turned a corner. Months passed. Emma and I weren't just rebuilding a relationship. We were creating a new one. We still had our weekly dinners, but now she was the one suggesting plans. Want to catch a movie? Can we go to that diner Mom used to love? "Hey, I need help with something. Think you could come over?" Little by little, she started letting me in again, and I held on to every single moment. One day she called me, sounding hesitant. "So, I got my college acceptance letter." My stomach clenched. "Yeah?" She cleared her throat. "I got in full scholarship." Pride swelled in my chest. "That's amazing, Emma." A pause. "There's just one problem." I frowned. "What is it?" She hesitated. "I don't know if I want to take the scholarship." I blinked. "Why?" Another pause. "I want to do this on my own," she admitted. "I don't want to feel like I owe anyone anything." I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. "Emma, you don't have to prove anything to anyone." She didn't respond. I took a deep breath. "I want to help," I said simply. "Not because I expect anything, not because I'm trying to make up for the past, just because I'm your dad." Another silence. Then, quietly, she asked, "Would it really be okay if I let you?" I smiled. "Yeah, kid, it really would." When she finally moved into her dorm, I helped her unpack. We didn't make a big deal out of it. No dramatic speeches, no emotional breakdowns. Just the two of us, starting fresh. At one point, she paused, looking at me thoughtfully. "You know," she said, "I used to think I'd never trust you again." I swallowed hard. "Yeah?" She nodded. "But I think I do now." My chest ached in the best way possible. I didn't push. I didn't ask for more than she was ready to give. I just smiled and said, "I'm glad." And for the first time in years, I knew everything was going to be okay. It's been 3 years since that day. 3 years of growth. 3 years of showing up. Emma graduated college last month. I sat in the front row, cheering the loudest. And when she walked off that stage, diploma in hand, she found me in the crowd first. She ran up, hugged me tight, and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Tears burned in my eyes. I pulled her in closer and said, "Never again, kid." Because no matter what, I was always going to choose her. And this time I wouldn't let her go.